guys an enhancement job. During today's talk I'll spoil every bit out of the Italian job, but that will not be an actual spoiler for the entertainment that you will have of watching that movie. No. We'll be okay, it's just a few gifs and... Okay, my name is Arjan and I will be blowing some websites up today, and I will tell you how to not do that actually, but keep it a bit easy, not blow everything up, let some things fail, but let the car drive or the website drive. Yeah, actual car was blown up in the movie, as you will see later. So, some things that could blow up any website. Your website, my website, could happen to anyone. For example, you have some assets on a CDN and, well, CDN says new. And that could be the CDN is down. What's gonna happen to your HTML? CSS is not there, JavaScript is not there, nothing's there except your HTML text with formatting, nothing else. If that happens to your website right now, CSS off, JavaScript off, would you be happy with it? Or my Angular thing is gonna blow up. Alright, another case. You're in some place and your GPRS or Edge network says, too lazy for now, can give up loading this stupid CSS file, I don't care about it. And or the font file. If your font file fails to load, what would happen to your beautifully enhanced text? Is that actually enhanced, or will that fail miserably? Or this, if you have a third-party piece of JavaScript and you depend on it. You depend on it in a way that if it is removed, it will destroy your website. Or you have some media queries on your website and an actual new device from Android becomes hugely popular, or Nokia is suddenly the best thing and it implements some stuff that you don't really can handle, or will it be okay on your website? Is your website going to be fine if there's some crazy stuff in there that the browser is going to do with it? Or this one was in the news lately when Apple introduced a plugin for Safari that you could, for example, remove fonts or anything from a website within your iPhone. Some websites did not actually work anymore, just failed completely. Okay, like that. So this was the car that I was talking about. And during the movie they will say every bit of your website can fail and will fail eventually, and may that be the JavaScript part, may that be the CSS part, may that be a part of the CSS part, even your HTML, if you include something that will be deprecated or will be there will be an error that occurs in the HTML for some reason in the future, it will fail. So I'm gonna slow down a bit because I think I just only passed 1 minute, but yeah. Okay, we can build a website that we can blow the doors off, but that will be able to drive, and it will not fail as in blowing the whole car up when a teeny tiny bit goes wrong. That's my analogy for today, and I guess it's a very dirty word. It's the word accessibility, and some people just don't want to talk about it. You say, "Hey, psst, accessibility. Accessibility. What do I do? What? Yeah, it's that word we need to talk about this word right now, and it's the biggest bit of progressive enhancement, but there's also a few other things. So we're going to talk about progressive enhancement, and it also includes structuring. It includes the separation of things, everything that you could separate and needs to be separated, and it means in the end making your website accessible to anyone or with any device or anywhere that they would want to access your website. That's the most important thing. That's number one on there. So. But to do that, the HTML, CSS and JavaScript will need to be separated, and you will separate them to avoid depending on them, and then you can enhance actually. So you will layer up. That's also a term that you can use. In the end, your code will be crafted well to build for. Okay. Is everything clear so far? Just checking. No? Okay, that's good. The idea is to start with the most basic rigid version that you could possibly hope for. The most, if you would ask everyone in Amsterdam, any device that they would use or any location that they might go, or any browser that they might have installed on their phone, it should work for everyone and all of them. It's that means not only the HTML that is attached to it, like you could say that it's only HTML and no CSS, but there's also a very first layer of CSS that you could use on all of the devices that everyone uses. So it could look pretty already. The most basic version of your website does not need to look black on white. That's I think a misunderstanding that some people have about progressive enhancement. It needs to be the HTML first, and then actually we could leave it alone, and then that's progressive enhancement at the basic first step. But it could be some coloring, no huge media queries or any module in CSS 3, 4 that you could find to enhance it already, but it should be able to include some styling. So the second step from that basic rigid version is to detect what you can enhance, if it would work, and if it's needed at that point in time. And then, if that is the case, do so. And the key lies in this second thing, because if something is not needed on a website to achieve a certain goal, then why include it in the first place? Why not include it in the second place? So that's the concept that I want you to think about as progressive enhancement. It's wooding and needing some enhancement, if it would work and if it's needed to work. So I think I explained this already pretty thoroughly. Just yet, the most basic version of your website, it's some HTML, some styling, that's it. And then you will enhance. And how would you determine if the enhancement would work? There are key methods that I would suggest you to Google or Stack Overflow later on, because it's for each and every purpose a different solution. But there are ways to detect anything if it would work at all. You could detect if fonts work, external fonts. You could detect if like the element H1 works. You could just check it. It's a little bit pointless right now, but you could check. You could check if any element in HTML works properly. That also means that you can detect if the most complicated behavior that HTML allows works in the current browser that is visiting your website. So that's what this step means. Will my feature, will my enhancement work in the browser that is visiting the website? And then the part, is it needed? Is it needed for the current visitor to have a bunch of megabytes thrown at him or her without actually needing that feature? If you are the most basic example that you could give is if you have a blog where there are a few related items at the footer. Would you show them immediately on page load, as in include them in the HTML, or would you allow them to scroll and interact with the page faster, and then when they're finally at the point where the related items are visible, then load those related items? It could be faster, it could be easier to make it so that it loads later on while the user is interacting with the page, if you know what the visitor is going to do. For example, the visitor could immediately click on another link in the top section of the blog item, or they could search for another item. Okay. Basic versions for all the layers that you could interact with on a website. You could have the bandwidth, could be a factor. So you could optimize only a small version, a basic version with some checks, which would also include a check to see, will my assets, the assets that are maybe needed for my website, will they load properly within like 10 seconds if it's a big something? Or if the device is capable. Sometimes a website is really laggy on a mobile phone just because there are some advertisements actually in there, because they need some huge piece of CPU chunk, I don't know. And there's also the HTML, CSS and JavaScript. You could make a basic version of that and an enhancement version of that. So, if it sounds boring, so far we can enhance with the things that you can determine. So you can use the checks in CSS, in JavaScript, and see if you can enhance the website if needed and if able to. So So for example, an enhancement that you could have on a website, a little bit more interactive website, would be a drag and drop thing that you could drag your files to the browser. And what if there's no mouse in there at all? Then it won't work. So that's already a negation of the first question, will it work? Of course you could say, yeah, but my code is really tiny and it's only a few lines of JavaScript, and what's the matter? I wouldn't load it dynamically and wait for something else to fail. Yes, but there's a lot of things that you could throw together to make one big piece of JavaScript that will fail if one teeny tiny bit fails. Another example where you might not need something, that was actually what I just said about the news items. It's related news items carousel that you could have in the sidebar or underneath a news item. Is it really needed? Sometimes stuff is not needed at all. Then some implementation guidelines if you're gonna try coding some enhancements and some basic versions later on. And you could try actually writing some HTML markup that's actually nicely properly structured and neat class names that actually tell something about the content that's in there and not about what size the button should be or anything like that. Because sometimes it starts at the simple things, and that's this. Then cut some mustard. Actually that's something that I think the guys in England with the BBC or the Gov.uk, I'm not sure which one of them. BBC, yeah. So they came up with a neat little check that you could do. If you pass this test, then probably the browser is capable of doing some relaxed, cool JavaScript stuff. But if not, then just the HTML CSS version is okay. And that includes local storage, query selector all, and add event listener. And if those are supported in your browser, and that means IE9 and up, I think, and it's only the major Android browsers, etc. Then you could add some interactions that are more enriched, more powerful, and you would leave the poor IE6, IE7, IE8, IE9 or anything that you select for. You will leave them with a nice structured HTML document that's properly styled as well, and you will not add the interactions. Don't clutter your HTML with HTML that won't work without JavaScript. So if you need something that you build with JavaScript and you need some HTML elements for that, for example, why would you include that in the HTML in the first place if you could render them with JavaScript itself, or use a small template engine or anything that shows them anyway? But why would you clutter your HTML with stuff like that? Modularize all your things. When you have a basic version of your module, you could enhance your module and then the website in general will be enhanced. So if you enhance only a few modules, then for example, the experience that a visitor might have doing stuff on your website will be already much better depending on the modules that you have enhanced. This is also a bit a thing that you could sell to a client. You could say, like, I can make like a basic version of pretty much all of the website, but it won't be the most enhanced version. But I can do those in prioritized order, for example, and that's a way to make you hit a deadline earlier, better and nicer, and have something to show to the client, for example, in the first place. So. How are we doing time-wise? Did I just already pass the 5 minutes, or? So, yeah.
15 minutes.
15. Oh. Okay, I'm already done. But so you're gonna build a website for the future. Any device, any capable device of connecting to the internet will be able to load your website. It might be a smartwatch that will only render the HTML with their own style sheet. It might be a fridge that will speak out a website for you and does not care about the JavaScript that you put in there, except from loading it a little bit slower. If you build with the basic version and the enhanced version in mind, then it is most likely to appear on any device that will come out later on. Also something to sell to a client. Which iPhone version do you sell? I don't know, 99? Version 42? I don't know. It works. So it reduces also testing in all the browsers. You've done your basic version. If that works, it's done. So it reduces testing in general. And you will actually build for a lot of small wins instead of maybe one big failure, the case of a white loading screen that your website might appear to be. And there's also the thing that you have to do it the opposite way, the other way around, and that's actually graceful degradation. That's something that you will see maybe if you look it up, or if you Google for progressive enhancement, then there will be questions, what about graceful degradation? So graceful degradation makes you build alternatives when something fails, but that's thinking a little bit odd. And then there's of course the two twins, the graceful enhancement, EA, a website that you will build once and do not improve on any longer, or progressive degradation, when you structurally destroy a website by missing semicolon somewhere in the compiled JavaScript that makes your website appear like a white screen. So build with self-preservation in mind, and self-preservation means to protect yourself from harm. And actually in the movie, The Italian Job, that I'm slightly referring to, you would have a nice little song at the end, and it would say, "This is the self-preservation society." So if you watch the movie, then you will have this song stuck in your mind for at least a week. So do that. It's I would do it. It's really good. But to continue with the escalator elevator example that Tom just gave, you could build a space elevator, man, with this. Yeah. So it works as a stairs, but you can enhance to anything. So That's the most important thing. Progressive enhancement is not an end result, it's just part of your job. So you could integrate this in your workflow and will be happy, I guess. That's maybe the black box. No, I don't know. It's certainly the most basic underlying that you could integrate into your HTML, CSS, JavaScript workflow. So I guess that's about it. Pardon my French, it's only been 20 minutes, so lots of questions now, I hope.
I have one.
Okay.
You mentioned using front-end tools to test which features to enhance. Why not backend?
Why not backend? Well, it depends. You could use both. Because in the end, if you would really test with, for example, the header strings that the browser would send to the backend, are you really certain that it is actually what it is? Will it, if you would, for example, if someone would pass in something completely different that you won't expect into the header values for the user agent string, will it by default return an IE version or a Chrome version? Or?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but there are other ways to determine what kind of system you're on, not only by sniffing the user agent string.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that is the biggest means of checking for support. But I'm just saying there are other ways to determine what you could deliver to the user, and also if you can determine it server side, you don't need an extra request round trip from the server to the front end, because that's also latency. Close it upside down.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give an example? Because I don't get it.
Well, no. Well, yeah, I'm a front-end developer.
Because I think most of it's testing support, so you check whether a query selector is in the window, which you can check server sides. I guess that's the. Well, in my opinion, it's 99% of progressive enhancement is checking on features which are in the browser, which you can check.
Yeah.
At this point in time in the server side. So I'm really curious. I'm just curious because maybe I'm just missing out, or
well, maybe I am missing out. That could also be the case. No, but as to my understanding, it is possible to check for network features, for instance, what kind of network you're on. If you're on a slow network, then you don't deliver images, for instance.
Yeah, but
like
it's from two sides, right? It's also the need part that, for example, I could have the urgent need to watch the trailer for an upcoming movie, and I want it in full HD quality and the maximum frame size, and I could be on GPRS. And if someone else would say, no, I want you to have 480 pixels and I want you to have very nicely crafted JPEG artifacts all over your frame, then that could be something, right? There should, that's what I try to say with the needs and if it would work. There could also be a link to an upgrade version or the other way around.
So how do you determine the need of the user?
The behavior of the user. So he or she will do something on your website that you could measure.
So your example of the alternative content to the right, whilst the user was only interested in the main article. That
could also be the opposite way. It could also be that the person was just clicking around and wanted to get to the next article. That's correct.
It's really hard to determine such like a user intent. It's hard to determine in such case. Like if it's below the fold, then there's obvious intent because they're scrolling. But it's really hard to determine if everything is above the fold.
And that's actually why, for example, the thing with the HD version of the movie trailer, give the user some
control,
a stick that they could do something with.
Right.
For example, for the related items, there could be just a link that you could upgrade as the related items, but the link could be to the archive, for example. So they can click on it while anything is loading and go to the archive.
Right. But
once something is loaded, you would display the related items. That's good. Yeah.
We have client hints coming in regards to server-side checking, which you can set meta tags in your heads, which you can pass to the request object, so that you can check the device pixel ratio, for example, server-side. I guess the viewport width, something else. But it's coming, I don't think it's supported.
And also the type of image, right? So if your browser supports WebP, then you can send WebP images in.
Yeah. So then you don't need to have the picture with source set thing, like it becomes like that size, and you just say image, which...
Well, on the other hand, probably the committee that would discuss this kind of thing would be kind of held back by the privacy concerns that might arise when you try to pass a lot of sensible...
But you still, you are responsible of passing the information to the request object. It's not like you get everything in every request. You are, as a front-end developer, you set them in the as a meta tag. So you said, I want to pass the device pixel ratio, for example. And I guess you cannot pass everything.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You could track anything then if you put the code in there. Yeah.
Yes, you mentioned modularizing your code. What kind of method would you use?
Not cramming up everything in one file.
Oh, I mean, there are several techniques, several ways of working and thinking. What do you use yourself?
Well, there's a neat little method of splitting your files, for example, alone all, by a few folders that you could, and that's for CSS, but you could do the same for JavaScript.
Like
that's the 7.1 pattern, and that's one I'd like you to use, and it involves folders such as a base, layout components, vendor, and yeah. So that's given me quite a good time getting some control over like complex layouts already.
Okay,
so
but it's not modularizing that you are isolating your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Like you have a piece of HTML that renders.
Yeah, you could do something like that. Indeed, you could have one file for the CSS and one for the JavaScript, and a bit of templating code that is your module. That's also a way. Yeah, definitely.
Have you worked with design agencies that have this progressive enhancement thing really in their heads, and have you seen them actually providing insight in how such a very basic version would work and how it would progressively enhance? I've never seen such agency myself.
Yeah,
but maybe you can name drop one so I can copy that.
Well, it's not like there's something that they're gonna request. Like I want the website fully progressively enhanced, but no, it's certainly something that I meant with like this. It's your job.
I know about
So-
interpreting design and making it work in both ways.
Yeah.
But interpretation can be wrong.
Yeah.
And it happens to me, like, you've got it all wrong, mate, and then, oh, what did you actually want? And only then you get the real input that you require. And so I was hoping you'd name drop, really, I was hoping you would name drop a design agency that has this in their mind.
Yeah, because what is basic? You mentioned basic. I've built a website before that was actually exactly this, pretty basic and full-fledged, but for my understanding, pretty basic is something completely really different than the client imagines. So how would you, I think this is a valid question, do you have a design agency that actually thinks that up for you, or do you do that yourself? Or do you
I can unfortunately not name drop any design agencies or so, but what I can do is that almost at every job as consultant that I would pick up, there's one of the questions that arises: which IE version do we support? So that's something already that tells you, should that question be there, or it's more like a question, which IE version should it work in full-fledged? And then I don't think the N-1 version should get nothing, of course, but
Well, the basic version of the website that I built had some rulers, which had colors. The headings had some colors, and had some images, some table colors, and that was it. But that was like 5 years ago. I'm not sure if basic is actually also progressively enhancing.
Perhaps building on that question, would you feel comfortable showing some of your own work off and showing what the basic version would be and how you would progressively enhance it? Perhaps a live website that you can show
no,
us?
I'm gonna not live demo anything.
Okay.
So.
I
But you
just-
can
just
Google.
asking if you feel
You can
comfortable.
Google my portfolio.
Okay.
then.
I do.
I can say I do. I'm not
But I can show you what I meant if you have Wi-Fi here.
Probably, yeah.
Type in code first.
I think my Wi-Fi is broken already. And sorry, it's gonna work. Yeah, I've got a thing on my laptop. If you have the other one, laptop, I could show it. My laptop does not work with Wi-Fi very well. It's a MacBook, sorry. No, serious.
Do we have other questions maybe?
Yeah, other
Just
questions.
forget
Just-
about
Otherwise you can just show them during the breaks or something.
Yeah, sure. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'll go. You mentioned a little templating engine.
Yeah, sure.
Like, which one?
Like any of the ones that you could find with a good search through.
Good answer. No, what?
Yeah, I've got experience with Moustache, but it's really basic, really good.
Yeah.
If you want to do simple stuff.
So replace. You can just use replace. Just
Yeah. Why not?
read something and say replace. I mean that's the simplest template engine you can get.
Yeah, that's not really templating engine. But
Well, I use it every day, I guess. So yeah.
right.
For small things.
But yeah,
could
if you want the for loops or the if else structures or anything like that, yeah, I guess Moustache can do a lot for you. But
I've got lots
yeah,
of
I have not got a complete list of all the because last time I searched there was already 10 well-maintained ones that were listed on Wikipedia, so that sounds good to me.
Yeah. Right. And you mentioned the basic test that the BBC guys did. I've got here local stories, query select all, and what was the third one?
Defending this next.
Okay, alright. I have no further questions, so. I'm dismissed.